Disclaimer: this video is purely humorous in nature. The author does not seek to offend or humiliate anyone. There may be profanity in the video. People under the age of 16 should refrain from watching this video. Welcome to the channel. This is a new title adventure of a magician in the world of Naruto. You can subscribe to my boosty, Lennon Naruto videos are released there every day. Enjoy watching everyone, subscribe to the channel and like. Part 1. Getting into and getting used to the world. Hello, my name is Archibald of F1. An aristocrat of the nth generation, albeit a simple chevalier. A hereditary magician and a notorious lazy person, as my mother said. When I started writing this diary, I was 27 years old. I have already studied at the School of Magic and received the 10th level, which I can use to wipe myself off, since no employer will hire such a magician. These are also called complete zeros, no experience, no skills, no spells. Then I completed courses in household magic. In it I rose to the 7th level, which is also not enough, but at least something. Thanks to her, I was able to get a part-time job at the Adventurers Guild. To the laundry room. But they still pay better there than in any other place. And with my level, I can't do more. While I was working part-time there, I saved up a little money by washing clothes that were especially dirty with reagents, bleeding, and I don't know what else. You know, adventurers sometimes get into such shit. And this is not in a figurative sense, alas. So I saved up a little money and went to the College of Magic. They teach, frankly, SOSO, but raising your level to the 8th level is quite possible. Apart from household magic, I am number 7 there. And this is already a lot. So I lived, studied, worked, slept for a couple of hours, and again everything in a circle. To be honest, after a year of living like this, I already wanted to give up on everything and just die in a corner somewhere. But it was too difficult for me to do this due to the fact that this angle still had to be found, and I didn't have the strength. But still, in a year and a half I completed the college and received my 8th level patent. Do you think that's all? Like, is my life a success? Nothing, the 8th level is no better than the 10th. Well, except that you know a little more tricks. After this increase in level, I was also entrusted with cleaning rooms and recharging magic lamps. Salaries have increased, but expenses have also increased. This is how I celebrated my 20th birthday. 1. In my closet, where there was only a single bed, a table with a chair and a bedside table. Not much. Living sometimes from hand to mouth, he finally saved up at the age of 22 for the university, and was able to enroll in the first year. And there I met, as they say, high society. Sometimes I understand ordinary people complaining about aristocrats. All these counts, marquises, dukes, etc., etc. Sometimes they're like bleep. And when they found out that I was a chevalier, there was no life at all. My only salvation was in the university library, where I registered on a permanent basis, managing not only to pass the assigned material, but also to study more, so that upon graduation I could improve my rank even further with the exam. I studied for 3 years, and at the age of 25 I finally escaped from that hell. A pale, skinny and always hungry magician of the 6th stage in very worn and in many places patched clothes. I was imagining that other spectacle back then. In the same guild, I was offered the path of an adventurer, but I refused, because adventurers have an interesting life, but not for long. And with my level, and most importantly, my arsenal, there is nothing to do there. I could no longer only clean efficiently and wash with magic, but I could also produce a stream of fire or a wind ram. However, my arsenal was so thin that you couldn't look at it without tears. But in the university library I dug up a lot of interesting material on creating and improving my own spells. Which is what I started using. I won't say how much it cost me, but over time my arsenal was enriched with a fire arrow, a water jet, an ice shard, an earthen spear and a weak version of earthen armor. Not much, of course, but with this I was able to pass the 5th level. And then I stood, as they say, against the wall. Without personal apprenticeship or some other source of information, I would not have been able to increase my level. So when I saw an advertisement in the guild about working for the Archmage, I almost screamed and snatched this task from the guild master. For some reason no one took it. It's a pity I didn't think to ask why everyone refused. But then it was an opportunity, and I didn't want to miss it. Arriving at the address on the application, I was escorted to the Archmage. He simply asked me what I wanted to get from my help, which consisted of participating in one harmless experiment. Well, I asked for a few spells. The Archmage grinned and fulfilled my request. He gave me a notebook in which 100 different spells were written down that could help me rise to the 4th stage. I was very grateful to him. And then I cursed. This old man took me to an empty hall in the basement of his house and asked me to stand in the center of a figure drawn on the floor. He assured me that nothing dangerous would threaten me. I checked the energy in the figure, and indeed, the energy of the spell was not dangerous. And the figure did not contain anything alarming. When I stood in the center of the figure, the old man read some kind of formula, and I lost consciousness. When he woke up, he gasped from a headache. I tried to open my eyes, but it felt like glass dust had been generously poured into them. Tears flowed and a groan escaped from my chest. What's wrong with me? Damn this Archmage! He croaked somehow, digging through his memory through the unpleasant sensations and looking for at least one of the spells that should help in such a situation. And oddly enough, I found it. Blindly, tangling with his fingers, he made the necessary gestures and put his palm to his face. The discomfort in my eyes began to go away. But a strange coldness in my chest began to rapidly increase. It was like, fuck it! He croaked in shock, realizing that this feeling was nothing more than magical exhaustion. And this is just from the hand of grace. Yes, this is a spell of the 9th circle. I always had enough magic even for the 5th circle. WTF? Without shelving this question, I sat down on the ground and took a pose for meditation, bend my legs under myself, renounce the world and look into myself. After suffering for a dozen minutes, I finally saw my magical structure and everything was sad. Everything was more or less fine with the core, except for the fact that it was greatly weakened. It was as if he hadn't trained him since he was 10. But this was bullshit compared to what was happening with the thin shells of the aura, through which the manipulation of energies occurs, and then the spell is reproduced. To put it mildly, the shells of the aura were twisted and distorted to the point of horror. Looking with a shudder at this lump of shells, I was amazed that I was able to make at least something out of spells, and it didn't tear me into many little archibalds. But, as they say, the eyes are afraid, but the hands grow out of nowhere. We need to deal with this right away. With such a core it will be difficult, but if you don't correct it now, the structures will begin to tear from tension, and then you can give up on the magician's career. Well, then go ahead, Archibald. So, this line here. So, where is the continuation of this shell? Well, no wonder what twisted her. Come here, dear, little by little, little by little. Oh, you! Ugh, I almost tore it. Let's continue. Sweat flowed from me, but I tried to detach myself from the world around me and my bodily sensations, since the prospect of remaining a magical cripple was not at all attractive. I don't know exactly how much time had passed, but when I opened my eyes, I was surrounded by the darkness of the night, and sweat was dripping from me. And I was naked. Here are some more changes. But this was not what struck me most of all, but the fact that I looked no more than 7 or 8 years old. I realized this when I noticed the immature proportions of the body and created a mirror using the focus of the 10th circle. A small, red-haired boy with bright blue eyes looked at me from the mirror. This is a dissonance of colors, however. The hair was long and stretched in an even and smooth stream all the way to the butt. The face was cute and cute. It's immediately obvious that when I grow up, I'll be even more handsome. Taking a long sigh, I mentally went through the Archmage and his relatives down to the 10th generation in an uncultured manner. This damn magician brought me back to the age of 10. Changed my hair color and my whole body. Twisted the energy structure into a C knot. Thank the gods, at least I didn't break up with the damn grandmothers. What about the core? My magical core, which I have been training long and tediously since I was 10, 15 years down the drain. 15 fucking years old. My reflection and self-flagellation was suddenly interrupted by a loud and prolonged roar of my stomach, in an obscene form demanding food. Taking a long breath, I looked around. And he slapped the palm of his right hand on his forehead. I was meditating and restoring shells in the middle of some forest. No protection. Without anything. I'm a moron. But when I looked around in more detail, something else surprised me. Around my body, exactly in a circle for a couple of meters, the grass was for some reason greener, juicier and higher, more beautiful. Strange. The unraveling of the shells, of course, occurs with a considerable release of magical energy into the space around, but there is not enough of it there to have such an impact on the environment. So, what else did this fucking archmage do to me? But my stomach again distracted me from the instant search for deviations, so I had no choice but to lift my butt off the ground and look around more carefully to see what I could eat. Having made a couple of gestures with his hands and crookedly drawn a few runes on the ground cleared of grass, he winced at such execution, but the necessary tools were clearly somewhere far away, so it will do. O forest, whose leaves are raging in the wind, hear my call, open your closets, open up to me and show grace. Akin to the forest. A moment, and the magic inside me began to bubble, and I again felt the cold in my chest. Damn weak core. Well, just wait with me, I'll shake you up some more. But, thank the gods, there was enough energy for this, in principle, simple spell, and I felt the direction to different places. So, that direction gives off a feeling of playfulness, freshness, and fun. This is clearly either a stream, or a small river. The other direction is reflected in sensations of excitement, and trembling, obviously some kind of herbivore that can be used for food, but it's not possible to use combat magic with my core right now. But you can't fight the beast naked. One more direction, rustling wind, pleasant aroma. Just what you need. Berries. And if the forest points to these berries, then they are edible for me. Having caught a more accurate direction, I went in the right direction. Looking around, I was surprised to see that the trees around were real giants. To wrap around the base of the tree, you need at least 24 more of me. And then I feel it's not enough. And what a height! Personally, I didn't see the peaks because of the equally gigantic branches of these trees and their lush foliage. Strange, I have never seen such trees before. Neither live nor in pictures. Yes, even in the forests of the elves there were no such giants. And these trees feel strange. It's like they're looking at me. Calmly so, and so far favorably. It's like they're alive. Brrr. After half an hour of walking in the darkness, which I dispersed with the help of a firefly in my hand, a weak spell of the 10th circle, I came out into a small clearing and saw there whole thickets of bushes on which berries hung in clusters. This is where I got in successfully. An empty stomach did not make me doubt it for long. And why? The forest will not point out poisonous plants if you have not done anything bad to it. Gobbling up the berries, large and round, bright purple, sweet and nutritious, I kindly remembered the half-elf from the college who taught me such an undoubtedly useful spell. I remember he taught us survival lessons in the forest, and his name was Master Alorian. Due to the fact that he is a half-breed, the ending of his name was N. Purebloods always end their names with L. For example, as a herbalism teacher at the academy, Master Alonial. Of course, I couldn't feel the forest the way the master felt it, but I still managed to learn something. I learned many forest survival tricks, as well as what you shouldn't do to anger the forest. Much of the half-elf story captured me then. The other students listened to him just because, but I was fascinated, and tried my best to understand his science. After all, everyone knows that no one understands the life of the forest better than elves. He then saw my passion for his story and eventually gave me additional lessons. And I tried. After all, when I managed to do everything right, the forest changed dramatically for my perception. He became like a mentor and a kind uncle, who, of course, could kick the ass for intrigues. Under the supervision of a mentor, I learned to find food in the forest and negotiate with the animals that inhabit it. And he even learned to hear the will of the forest to a limited extent. My success in this field made my mentor shake his head in shock. Once he even told me that I obviously have some share of elven blood, because there is no other way to explain my success. And now, gobbling up berries on both cheeks, he commemorated Master Alorian with a kind word. And earlier, when there was not enough money for food, the forest often helped me out and fed me. Even in winter it was quite possible to survive in it. For example, I once found a tree where a family of squirrels stored their supplies for the winter. And quite happily I got some nuts, dried mushrooms and berries from them. In exchange for food, the squirrels asked me to bring some tasty white water. Milk, in human terms. I was able to fulfill their request only after a week, but the animals were happy and were not at all offended by the delay. There were different times. Having eaten, I felt drowsy. Having found a tree with conveniently protruding roots, I climbed into them and curled up, fell asleep and did not see how the roots of the tree under which I was lying moved and sheltered me from the wind and cold, leaving only gaps for air to enter. The forest took care of its strange visitor, so kindly sharing its energy with him, and not taking it away, forcing him to obey, destroying or burning him. There was something strange and familiar about this boy, albeit very, very weak. The forest did not feel this even from its creator, Hashirama Senju. Therefore, when an hour later the guy began to freeze, the forest called several of its furry residents to the tree under which the guy was sleeping. And these same residents, clinging to the boy, began to warm him with their soft, warm bodies. Waking up, I was surprised to feel comfort and warmth, and not cold and a stiff body. Carefully opening my eyes, I saw that a whole flock of squirrels was sleeping on me. Their faces were so cute, partially hidden in their tails, that I didn't dare move and wake up these cute animals. However, the thought that somehow this was wrong got me thinking. Concentrating on the feeling of the forest, I was surprised to note its increased favor towards me. From what? Why? I did not understand. But the fact remains a fact. The forest was kind to me. Mentally shrugging my shoulders at such oddities, I decided not to waste time and entered into meditation, despite the uncomfortable position. And I was surprised to notice the growing energy core. And also the fact that green colors of all shades began to predominate in it. Clearly he was so influenced by the energy of the forest surrounding me, and its energy. He chuckled to himself and began to use his inner vision to look for energy lines nearby and was surprised to see one right below him. And this line was extremely unusual. It was overly large and rich. Surprised by the strangeness of this place, I carefully released a thin flagellum from the core and connected it to the line of power. And he was quite surprised. The energy was strange. Too dense, thick and powerful. I have never seen such energy in my world. And I have not heard of places where they would be found. And this suddenly made me understand something. I feel like I'm not in my own world. Damn. I was surprised, shocked. But my nature as a magician, and therefore a scientist, and my extremely curious essence did not allow me to fall into panic or shock. I began to study. The energy from the core penetrated into the shell of the line of force in tiny sparks and began to analyze. And after an hour I already had a rough idea of what this line was and how to assimilate this energy. Energy flowed along the flagellum from the line to the core, along the way passing through the filters I created and getting rid of harmful impurities that could negatively affect my delicate, and still too weak magical core. I absorbed energy in very small portions and did not see what was happening to me outside. And it was quite an amusing sight. The squirrels, which served as a kind of blanket for me, suddenly all woke up and jumped to the sides. The forest became worried, feeling how the strange man had woken up, but did not get up. And then the guy's figure suddenly began to be covered with the green light of pure energy of nature and life. The forest exhaled from its tree crowns. He was shocked. He was amazed. After all, it cannot be that a person is capable of such a thing. A person always contains admixtures of different energies, and it is impossible in principle to get rid of them, since this will kill him. But the little guy that lay in the roots of one of his bodies was now absorbing energy from the essence of the world and purifying it. And a radiance radiated from the body, in which there were energies harmful to it, but useful for the forest. The tree under which the guy lay began to absorb the energy emitted from the guy and redirect it through the root system to the rest of the forest. Absorbing energy from the line, I filtered it, but there were too many harmful impurities for my core, so I had to emit an unnecessary spectrum with all my energy shells into the space surrounding me. Thus, I was killing several birds with one stone. I developed the core with an infusion of pure energy, and sent excess energy and harmful impurities outward through the shells, increasing their conductivity and increasing throughput. But how much work it took me to absorb energy from the vein only in small portions, who would know? The pressure of energy in the vein was simply incredible. At some point, I suddenly felt how something began to absorb harmful energy and remove it from the space surrounding my body, thereby making my work easier. I don't know what or who it was, but he helped me incredibly with his actions. I could now let a little more harmful impurities through without fear of harming my body and the forest. The energy from the line was of very high quality, and therefore the core grew and strengthened quite quickly. But the shells surprised me. They suddenly began to progress at incredible speed, not only strengthening, but also increasing in quantity and quality. It was amazing. But I didn't see anything harmful in the new shells. Everything was within normal limits. And it struck me more and more. 2 hours later, I carefully disconnected from the energy vein and took a deep breath. Opening my eyes, I saw an incredible change in the world around me. All the vegetation around me became taller and greener, and the roots of the tree were covered with green moss, which glowed with a light greenish light. And the very feeling of the forest seemed to expand and strengthen. I felt the contentment and joy of the forest. It was as if he had been treated to something incredibly tasty and healthy. I felt many trees around. These trees had strengthened and grown. In the clearing there were more bushes with berries and something new and edible. But how? Where? Is this really all because of the excess energy and harmful energies that I threw into the surrounding space? As soon as I thought about it, Les suddenly agreed with me. As if someone incredibly ancient and powerful bowed his head in agreement. Go crazy. So this is what the mentor was talking about, explaining his feeling of the forest. Rising from the ground, covered with a thick layer of luminous moss, which could serve as a good bed for me, I made my way out into the clearing. Having scratched the top of my head, I went in the direction of the nearby sensation of water, and literally 5 meters later I found a flowing stream. Although I'm willing to bet he wasn't here yesterday. Having drunk and washed, he returned to the clearing and snacked on berries and new fruits, which turned out to be very edible, tasty, and nutritious. Having thought that we should look for a way out to people, I thought about the question, are there any people in this world at all? And is it worth going to them now? After all, people have always been aggressive and impulsive, which, combined with paranoia, can lead to any consequences. Therefore, I will have to stay here for a while. And where else can I find such a convenient place to live, and with such a powerful energy line? It's decided. I'm staying here temporarily. We need to regain the former form of the energy core and shells. Otherwise, I might not survive an aggressive encounter with local aborigines. As they say, healthy paranoia has saved many lives, After a week of living in this strange place, as well as connecting to the energy vein 3 times a day, I was able to understand the purpose of the new energy shells in my body. It was amazing. They stimulated the growth of muscle fibers, strengthened bones and tendons, triggered benign mutations in the body, and destroyed malignant ones. My core grew and strengthened by leaps and bounds. In just a month of such strengthening, I will be able to surpass my development that I had before. The feeling of the forest and the management of body energies have also improved. I was even able to regain my nonverbal magic, reduce the number of gestures for spells, and improve the direct work with weaving spells. It was amazing and shocking. All my knowledge about the nature of the growth of the core and energy shells spoke of the impossibility of such rapid progress. but some knowledge about the theoretical development of a magician due to stronger and higher quality energy, which I read in some treatises, was confirmed. That is why I had to qualitatively examine all the changes and mutations in myself, otherwise you never know. So far we haven't been able to find anything harmful in ourselves, but it's better to be safe than sorry. I didn't find anything other than positives. In my previous body, I was tall, 1 meter 85 centimeters, but skinny and physically weak. And now I was not childishly strong, fast and dexterous. With an apparently 10-year-old body, I could easily lift twice my own weight. He moved faster and more dexterously, and at the same time managed to perceive the surrounding reality, which indicated an increase in perception and activity of brain neurons. I began to remember the past easier. Soon I could even remember those books that I had once simply skimmed through without really reading into them. And now I could reread them from memory, although previously I didn't really remember or understand what they were about. But most importantly, I remembered the very notebook that the Archmage gave me, and which I managed to look through in its entirety. And now I learned those spells from memory, accustoming my energy to weaving spells of the fourth circle of magic. I could not reproduce them yet, since I lacked the energy of the core and the plasticity of the thin energy shells. But training will allow me to start using them in 3 months. Which is incredible in itself, since in my previous body I would have had to improve my shells for about 2 or even 3 years. And only then, with a creak and a long cast, with many crutches, would he be able to reproduce at least one simple spell of the fourth circle of magic. To compare and understand the weaving of magic, I will give you examples of weaving from different circles of magic. Let's start with the simplest ones. 10th circle. These are tricks, as magicians of a higher order call them. Firefly, for light, spark, for lighting a fire, relieving the pain of weaving. Very weak, require little knowledge and energy. Example: firefly, weaving based on lightning magic. Everything you need to do to create it this is to split lightning into very small discharges, from which light is created. And at the same time, very little energy is required. Now the spell of the 9th circle, which is created on the basis of firefly. Discharge. It seems easier to make than firefly, but it's not. For discharge, you not only need to take lightning, but you also need to create a potential difference in a certain area of space. This is done in order not to fry oneself and in general to be able to direct the shock of electricity outward. If firefly, this is an action of 2 components, then discharge already consists of 4 actions. The 8th circle already consists of 6 to 8 actions. 7, 10 or 15 actions. And by the way, to backfill they are simultaneous. This is for instant casting. For a temporary one, a different frame is built, and its parts are eventually combined into one structure, like a construction set. To understand the complexity of the 4th level of the circle of magic, I will only say that you need to do from 40 to 50 actions with the subtle energy shells of the aura. What creates the pattern weaving? It's easier with crutches, but it takes a long time. Therefore, magicians train their thin shells to make them more flexible and mobile. It is not easy, very difficult, but it is possible. A gift from magic. This is nothing more than the very possibility of sensing and controlling the subtle energy layers of the aura. Everyone has a core, but not everyone feels or sees it. At the university, I saw magicians who were exploring the possibility of teaching a non-mage to do magic. And, as I heard from them, this is quite possible, although it is extremely difficult for the subject. And it will be impossible for such magicians to study magic above the 7th circle. There are 2 subtle manipulations that a non-magician simply won't understand, no matter how you explain it to him. Just like that. And now I'm blowing my mind by collecting the structures of the 4th circle of magic using thin shells of the aura. I trained my shells for this and increased their energy conductivity. Weaving chose the simplest available, firestorm. Well, like a storm. Simply after energizing the weaving with mana, the magician releases waves of flame around himself at a distance of up to hundreds of meters, turning everything in this area to ash. Of course, I am not going to use this weaving in the forest, but simply training thin shells under it is quite safe for the environment. But after 6 hours of such training, I barely crawled to my moss bed and passed out. Upon awakening, connecting to the vein of magic, pumping up the core, strengthening the shells. 2 hours. Then wash, drink, have a snack, which made the forest happy, physical training for 2 hours. Then again for 2 hours connecting to the power core. Then food and training of thin membranes. And so on day after day. My training was brightened up by the feeling of the forest, its gratitude for the energy, and the many fluffy and not so fluffy animals that began to live in and near my clearing. I even once saw a bear with cubs playing with a family of tigers. In my clearing, predators did not touch herbivores, and everyone lived almost in harmony. The first time I saw a family of wolves in the clearing, I almost fired chain lightning at him. But Les stopped me in time. And then, having overcome myself, I approached the predators and was able to pet them, and then even play with the wolf cubs for an hour. It was incredibly nice. I really began to feel like an elf in my native forest. By the way, the feeling of the forest grew stronger and stronger day by day. And one day I saw in the reflection of a water mirror that my eyes had changed a little color and shape. They remained the same bright blue, but green threads appeared in the iris pattern. And also, sometimes green sparks seemed to flash in the pupil. It was strange, and I investigated this phenomenon at the energy level of the body. Everything turned out to be simple and difficult at the same time. It turned out to be a benign mutation that connected my thin shell, responsible for the sense of the forest, and my body at eye level. This is why there are such changes. Upon further investigation, I realized that with my changed eyes I could see living beings even behind obstacles and at a distance of up to 500 meters. That is, if there is someone alive at a distance of up to 500 meters, I will immediately notice him. A useful feature if you need to sneak among enemies or keep an eye on someone. By the way, I made my own clothes. How? Everything is simple and complicated at the same time. Household magic includes the ability to create clothes from scrap materials. So I now wore a light green turtleneck made of extra strong grass veins and spider webs, trousers made of the same material, and also a backpack that I had made for the future. Being strengthened with runes and magic, this material turned out to be surprisingly comfortable and durable. In addition, the forest in some incomprehensible way made it so that the fibers and clothing made from plants did not die and were able to grow and recover. This is such self-darning clothes. There was no need for shoes on the feet, since the clearing was covered with a carpet of soft grass and moss. And I didn't experience any inconvenience about this. But I made myself something like soft boots from the same fabric as the clothes. But the sole was made from the sap of one of the trees, which, after hardening, looked damn similar to rubber. It will come in handy later when I go to people. Shouldn't I go barefoot? 3 weeks into my training, I suddenly woke up in the middle of the night because Les was unhappy. I immediately turned to him with a cascade of mental images questions, and Les answered me in the same way. It turned out that several people were fighting nearby. And at the same time they shamelessly harm trees, grass, and the worst thing is use fire. I immediately decided to go to the battle site and look at the local people. This knowledge will be useful to me. The forest grumbled like a grandfather at this decision of mine, but did not resist. I jumped up, put my ankle boots on my feet and ran out from under the protection of the roots of a giant tree. Using an acceleration spell, he rushed towards the battle. Tree branches and bushes along the way made way for me, removing thorns and thorny branches. And so literally 10 minutes later I found myself in a tree near the very clearing where the battle was taking place. By the time I got there, the battle was almost over. In the clearing, 2 guys remained in relative order in clothes that were strange to me, in vests and with bandages on their foreheads. One had a metal plate on his headband with several intersecting ovals drawn on his temple, and the other had what looked like a leaf with a curl inside on his forehead. The one with the ovals on the plate had blue hair, a powerful, pumped-up figure, and was holding in his right hand a straight blade of an unknown type to me, through which, to my surprise, lightning discharges ran. He stood sideways to me and therefore it was impossible to see his face. In front of him stood a slender, black-haired guy wearing a bandage with what looked like a leaf with a curl on a plate. He had regular facial features, a refined figure of an aristocrat, and he looked at his opponent with strange eyes. I've never seen anything like this. Red iris with 3 commas around the pupil. In his hands was a strange knife or something else, noticeably triangular in shape with a handle tied with rope and a ring instead of a counterweight. It was immediately clear that this weapon was universal. Yes, I know a little about weapons. More than once adventurers had to clean it during their part-time jobs. And so they stood opposite each other, and behind them lay their comrades. Behind the one with the strange straight sword, they were dead, since I did not sense life from them. But the red-eyed comrades still had a chance to survive. But these guys got tired of standing still, and they rushed towards each other at incredible speed. Their weapons crossed, knocking out whole sheaves of sparks. After standing there for a moment, and not overpowering their opponent, they jumped to the sides and suddenly made a series of hand gestures. 2 voices merged into one. Sway-tun, water core! And from each opponent separated balls of water that seemed to come out of nowhere, rushed towards each other at great speed, and were destroyed at the same time, and then the red-eyed man made a seal with one hand, and Gen technique, hell of the mine. I could swear the commas in his eyes were spinning clockwise. But this is impossible? His opponent suddenly let out a sob and a moment later fell to the ground unconscious. How's that? So this means there is quite magic in this world. This is interesting. I'll have to get some of their weaves. Strange-eyed looked around and rushed to his comrades, taking medical supplies out of their bags. However, as I saw, the girl from his team could no longer be helped. Unfortunately, the wounds are too severe to be saved with a first aid kit. But the guy still has the opportunity to help with the available funds. The red-eyed man quickly bandaged both of them, but while bandaging the girl, tears flowed from his eyes. By the way, about the appearance of his partners. The guy was also black-haired, somewhat pale, and wearing the same clothes as their surviving partner. The eyes are really black, not red. He was wounded in the chest, shoulder, and leg. But not fatal. The girl had black hair, brown eyes, and a sweet face, now distorted by a grimace of pain and despair, and also stained with blood and tears. The figurine is also okay. She is dressed like her partners, only her pants are tied with bandages to the shin on her right leg. The red-eyed man said something to the girl, and she nodded in agreement. I heard what they were saying, but I couldn't understand anything at all. I don't know their language. After the girl nodded, the red-eyed one grabbed the guy and with a solid jump disappeared into the branches of the nearest tree. I chuckled and walked out into the clearing. The bodies of the dead were of little interest to me, but there was still interest. Weapons and things can tell a lot about the local level of development. But the girl. I needed information about this world, which means I needed a resident of this very world. She will fit perfectly, and I will cure her as a reward. I know a couple of suitable weaves. Approaching the girl, I realized that she had lost consciousness. Well, that's even better. Quickly making a couple of signs, I placed my blue-lit palms on the girl's head. And after a couple of minutes I had already transferred to myself her knowledge of the language, as well as some information about the existence of this world. Grunting, I weaved the weave of the 5th circle of magic and cast it on the girl, with a hiss feeling the pain in the thin shells and the cold in the core. It's too early for me to use such powers. But since I promised, even to myself, I will keep my promise. That's my character. Heh. The girl's wounds were closing right before her eyes, not even leaving scars in their place. Medium healing, for the treatment of her wounds was even too much. I wish I had known earlier. And then I stared straight into her open brown eyes, looking at me with some strange fear. Somehow this was not what I had in mind. Who are you? The girl said quietly in her own language, but I already understood it. Although tomorrow I will have to cancel training, as my head will hurt very much. What did you do to me? I tried to answer, but my throat and tongue twisted unpleasantly. Well, yes, it's as if I didn't say anything at all. And then there's the fact that it's not your native language, until your throat gets used to it. Grmh. Cured. Finally, I was able to squeeze it out. I cured you. No need to thank. No need to pay. Goodbye. And turning around, he went towards the bodies with hidden cloud protectors. Now I knew what it was. And who came up with such a sign? And the girl's name is Mitarashi Seo. She is 20 years old. She has a younger sister named Anko, who was lucky enough to become a student of the legendary snake Sannin. Well, they have life here. Having reached the first enemy, he quickly took off his ammunition and hung it on himself, adjusting the unloading and backpack straps. He picked up his strange weapon and, inserting it into the scabbard he found right there, hung it on his belt. Then I heard a rustling sound from behind, and I turned around. The girl stood up and looked in surprise at the slightly bloody but intact skin under one of the bandages. I sighed and headed into the forest, realizing that the girl would not want to let me go. And so it happened. Well, stop. I order you to stop. I, the Tokubetsu Jounin of Konoha, am obliged to accompany you to my village. Sorry, but I won't be your test subject. I answered her, and then snapped my fingers, releasing the weave of phantom pain from my aura. Behind me I heard a scream and the fall of a body, and I rushed into the forest at maximum speed, as I felt her returning comrade on the edge of the sensitivity zone with help in the person of two shinobi. The forest helped me, removing all my traces after me and straightening the grass, the earth, restoring branches that were accidentally broken. Walking out into my clearing, I exhaled calmly and smiled. Uchiha Shin will be surprised. He left his partner on the verge of death, and upon returning she was already on her feet. By the time she explains everything, by the time they chase me, there will be no trace of me. Part 2, Reflection, Change and Digestion of Information. I began to understand the knowledge gained only 2 days after meeting with local people, since my head hurt mercilessly. Still, the infusion of so much new information does not go unnoticed even for an archmage, let alone me. But when I got to these memories, I was pretty freaked out. Where to start? Well, from the most obvious, probably. There are simple people in this world, now certainly not mine, and difficult people. Difficult people call themselves shinobi. There are differences in them, and not small ones. Shinobi are stronger, smarter, faster, and can use chakra-based techniques. Techniques are extremely difficult to obtain. Well, the situation here is about the same as in my world. Except for mentors. After the academy, all graduates pass special mentor exams, and if they pass this exam, then the 3 genin received a sensei, as they say here. If the kids are simple, he's just a chunin who is not far from his idiots in terms of skills. But if the kids are not simple, clan children or children of rich parents, then they had a chance to get as many as a whole jounin as a mentor. By the standards of my world magician of the 3rd circle. And he quite normally taught them a lot, making them an elite team that quickly rises in rank and strength. I wish I could do that in my time. But among shinobi sometimes there are true geniuses who themselves become damn strong. However, this is only possible among clan members and those who have been mentored by mentors with skills and knowledge, because only they have the material for such a genius to stand on his feet and declare himself. One of these geniuses at this moment in time is Uchiha Itachi. He graduated from the academy at 7, fully awakened his eyes at 8, and at 10 he became a jounin and entered the ANBU special unit, where he now serves. He has a brother, Uchiha Sasuke, who is also considered a genius, but he is now 7 and just entered the academy. Says a lot, doesn't it? After all, his brother had already completed the academy at that age. Also among the famous geniuses of the past we can highlight Namikaze Minato, and the trio of Sanins who became legends. And Minato generally became Hokage, the ruler of the shinobi village. True, he did not rule for long due to an attack on Konoha by a demon. 9-tailed demon fox. Personally, I don't understand why they call him a demon, but, probably, the inhabitants of this world simply have not met real demons. Well, what was I talking about there? Oh yes. So, on the day the 9-tails attacked, the Hokage's wife gave birth. The seal on it weakened, and someone released the fox into the wild. It was clear from the glowing special sign in the demon's eyes who had tried, and since then the Uchiha clan has been treated very coolly. If not to say that they generally infringe on everything possible. They don't like it, but they cannot openly refute the attacks. There were too many witnesses to the demon's eyes. The clan began to be oppressed, and it began to think about an uprising. As some say. Well, I'm going off topic again. The fourth was then able to save Konoha, even though the demon managed to destroy it by a quarter. And he sealed the fox into his son, who is now hated by 55% of the entire population of the village. Poor guy. For example, I would have my dad's head twisted for something like that, yes. Both Naruto's mother and father died during the sealing that day. And the Council of Elders, together with the third Hokage, decided that the boy had no need to know his parents, and in general he should be sent to an orphanage as an orphan. And this despite the fact that Naruto's mother was an Uzumaki princess and had a very impressive amount of money. And her husband was Hokage, which means he had money. However, the guy now lives in some dingy hostel on a penny allowance and collects bruises and wounds on his body. And in the mental disorders. The little guy fell into the millstones of greedy politicians. He is hated, he lives from hand to mouth, and this is a reward for his father's sacrifice. I also learned from memory that there are 5 villages like Konoha. Well, of the great ones, or more precisely, they simply have more shinobi. This is Konoha itself, then stone, cloud, sand, and fog, but in the latter the civil war blooms and smells, so it has not been involved in politics for a long time. Konoha is located in the land of fire, where the giant forest in which I live grows. By the way, this forest was raised by the first Hokage of Konohagaku no Sato, Hashirama Senju, who had a Kekkai Genkai of the elements of wood. Honestly, I still don't understand why wood and not life, for example. He wasn't a moron, sort of? Strange world. I also learned that the shinobi of this world do not use mana, like me, for example, but chakra. This is something like energy that creates another system in the body of a shinobi, like the circulatory system, but through which this same energy, chakra, spreads throughout the body. It is believed to be a mixture of yin, mental, and yang body energies. Honestly, this almost blew my mind. This is what the local demiurge came up with, yeah. In short, their techniques will not suit me. Well, only if I don't have this very chakra, which I doubt, yes. But you still need to check, you never know. Also, these are their seals, cries, elements, of which there are 5. Motherfucker, since when did lightning? Is it not a derivative of fire and air? I cried, I freaked out, my brain rebooted, I calmed down. No, what nonsense, huh? So, inhale and exhale, inhale and exhale. I don't know who came up with this system, but I already want to turn it inside out and study it properly. And the knowledge of that idiot, according to some Rakudo, should be thrown out of your head like garbage. Well, what is this fucking legend about the creation of chakra? Some kind of tree. What does the tree have to do with it? These idiots destroyed the demiurge. And precisely when he had not yet finished creating the world. Morons. And to tear the power of the demiurge into 9 parts, what does it feel like? I wonder what kind of representative of the court of chaos came to see the light? After all, the whole situation of this world, with these constant wars, can only be explained this way. Yeah. It's impossible to figure this out without a decent amount of alcohol. But I can't, my body is still very young. What can I say? I don't even have the hormones of attraction to girls yet. Well, when they appear, I'll simply perform a ritual of calm on myself and the hormones will be under complete control. This has been practiced in our world for a very long time, since everyone is tired of problems and wars that arise due to some hormones that collapse the psyche of men and lead to wars and deaths because of some beauty who is sometimes not happy herself that she was born beautiful. And this, by the way, has led to the fact that the inhabitants of our world fully know what true love is. For show, I haven't had love yet. And I, as a magician, can with a clear conscience not rush into this. Mages, starting from the development of the core to the fifth circle of magic, live for a very long time. From 300 to I don't know how many years. I know an archmage who has lived for 5,000 years and still looks like a 20-year-old. And nothing, he has no health problems. Also, I'll tell you about choosing a wife for a magician. At the moment when we begin to feel that it's time to have offspring, otherwise it won't work out later, a too strongly developed core of magic will not give the child life and he will die in the womb. We change our appearance and go to the Academy of Magic. Anew, as they say. And there we begin to look for the one that will be dear to our hearts. One of them searched for 30 years, but found it. Yes, and mutually. He was lucky. In short, the passion must not yet reach the fifth size of the core of magic for normal conception and childbirth. Mages start a family right at the academy and work hard to conceive. And then this day comes, the sorceress gets up in the morning and feels the spark of life inside herself. She comes to the baby's father and pleases him with the news. The father almost goes crazy with happiness. It happened that the wife was really locked in the soft walls of the room. They were not allowed to get injured, much less harm the baby. But that was before. Now they use the sleep spell. The woman sleeps for a year, and then gives birth, also in a dream. Yes, the magician's child is carried for 12 months. And then they wake up the mother, and she is already holding her baby in her arms. Sometimes women refuse sleep in order to feel the baby in the womb. Such people themselves agree to the room. And also, information about the room. It is really necessary, since bearing and giving birth to a magician's child is very difficult, and you can easily lose him with any strong surge of magic in the mother's core. It happens that a family of magicians can lose a child 5 times and only give birth normally on the 6th time, so this is not idiocy, but a completely reasonable precaution. It seems that the information of this world has finally gotten to me, if I started to remember this about my world. Okay, stop thinking, it's time to take care of yourself. And then in this world, every century, it's a shinobi war. Is there nothing else they can do? Lifting my back away from the root, I sat in a meditative position and began to connect to the energy vein. 2 hours later I woke up, smiled at the core improvements I had received and headed out for a snack. A family of raccoons was lounging near the orange trees, and squirrels were throwing fruits from the tree to them. The raccoons began to peel the skin and wrinkled their faces so funny and sneezed when the juice got into their noses that it was impossible not to smile. I have a real divine garden here, not a clearing. There are just a ton of different animals around. Sometimes there is even nowhere to go, the animals gather so densely. They don't come close to me. Well, only if you are not sick or injured. As it turns out, negative energy for me life-giving for them. And if they are near me when I develop the core, then this energy emitted by me heals them. In short, this is a place for all animals sacred. And only here you can see how raccoons clean the skin of wolves or bears, or a tiger licks an elk. This is quite a sight, I tell you. It is especially interesting to see a mongoose playing with the tail of some snake. Also, this place is inaccessible to both people and shinobi. How did I know this? It's just that they were looking for me. Shinobi of the same Konoha. And they didn't find it. They passed literally a meter from my clearing, but did not see this very clearing. And neither sensory nor dojutsu helped them. Something like that. The forest completely closed this place from people entering. Except me, of course. I even once observed a shinobi who walked straight into a clearing and, as soon as he took a step here, instantly found himself on the opposite part of the clearing and put his foot there into the forest. To be honest, I was shocked. But I was grateful to the forest for its protection. And he treated me like some kind of nanny. It got to the point that some strange wolves with completely white skin and the size of a horse appeared in the clearing. They accompanied me everywhere if I left the clearing. And they drove away hostile living creatures from me. And when the shinobi appeared, discharges began to jump across the skins of these wolves and the shinobi did not notice the place where we were. And recently, along the edge of the clearing, bushes with such solid thorns, from which poison was dripping, began to grow wildly that only a blind imbecile would climb into them. These thorns did not pose a danger to animals, but to people very much. They left a passage for me, where a pair of white wolves were always on duty. Just an honor guard, damn it. So I lived, sorting through the rubble of memory received from Mitarashi, exploring the nature of the chakra that I finally found in myself and training. After a month of living in the glade of life, as he nicknamed it to himself, the tree under which he was pumping energy from the veins suddenly began to glow green on its own and began to rapidly gain growth and expand. Together with him, in some way incomprehensible to me, the clearing expanded. And this is in just 2 hours. The tree has grown 3 times in width and 2 times in height. Strange green nuts appeared on it, which healed the animals when they ate them. Having examined the tree in terms of energy, I was shocked to realize that it had taken down not only physical, but also energetic roots, which hooked onto a power vein and began to feed from it. In the language of this world, I taught the tree Saint Maud. In just a week, the clearing has transformed incredibly. Incredibly beautiful flowers, fruit trees and bushes with berries now grew here. And Les purred contentedly, like a cat that had been soothed by affection. But not only the transformation of the clearing happened at the moment the forest was connected to the power vein. My ability to sense life has jumped to a new level in development. Now I could easily feel life at a distance of a kilometer. A pronounced heterochromia appeared in my eyes. The blue iris of the eye acquired a pattern of a green flower, and the pupil itself changed from black to dark green. Just like that. Now I have a dojutsu too, Part 3. Self-learning from someone else's memory and an unexpected guest. In total, 3 months have already passed since I have been in the new world. And this world will finish me off. With its illogicality, idiocy in history and everyday life. But there is good news, the shinobi from Konoha stopped looking for me. Finally, there are no heaps of shinobi running around the forest, annoying the forest with their campfires and killing animals. After the Konoha shinobi left, robbers with a couple of nukenin came out from somewhere. No, where were they when it was impossible to breathe here from shinobi? So tell me? Yes, I know they did. But still? In short, as you probably noticed, the psyche has become a mess. I get irritated by everything that was possible and impossible. I found out about the nukenin, I was simply incredibly irritated, literally seething with indignation and anger. And why? Yes, because from memory I knew from the girl that shinobi robbers are touched only in 3 cases they need to be trained to blood young people. They give a good reward for the robbers, or it just got into their heads and a passing shinobi decided to kill them. That's all. What about ordinary people? Not everyone has a lot of money to pay shinobi to eliminate bandits. And more often than not, there is money. But ordinary people are so intimidated that they are simply afraid or physically cannot send a request for a mission. Fuck. In my eyes, shinobi villages fell lower and lower. They reminded me of mercenary guilds, who also simply won't lift a finger. And often they themselves turn into robbers when they know that nothing will happen to them for this. Ugh, I hate people like that. For example, everyone in the Adventurers Guild knows that the government will pay for any robbers found, eliminated, or brought in by them. And he will pay well. And therefore, even the rumor of robbers is greeted with joy by adventurers and rush to investigate their supposed habitat. So in our empire, robbery is an extremely short-lived job. Yeah. And now, right next door to me, there lives a group of robbers of 100 stupid snouts. And among them are 2 nukenins. One in strength level somewhere in the Chunin region. And here is the second full-fledged tokubetsu. And they burn fires, kill animals, to which I have become accustomed. I had already thought through a bunch of options for how I would kill them. He accumulated weaves in the aura, sharpened kunai and shurikens. And also the tanto that I got from the cloud shinobi. It turned out to be chakra conducting. It's an inconvenient weapon for me, since I don't know how to use it, but it has an amazing property: it conducts magical energy. Just like a staff. Okay, not the same, but it still does. This means I can use it as a wand and cast simple spells as long as I have enough mana. And also about kunai and shuriken. I use them, but I suck at using them, whatever. I already said that melee and ranged weapons are not mine? No, of course I knew which side to take him on. I even distinguished several types. But damn, I don't know how to use it at all. I tried to learn how to use kunai and shuriken. And what do you think? Kunai fly sucks. Probably defective. Out of 10 pieces, only 1 hit the target. What about shurikens? Who came up with this diabolical weapon? It's impossible for them to kill. It cuts, yes. And if they cut the carotid artery there, gouge out their eyes and the like, then there is a relative benefit. However, how can you even throw them? I cut my hands to hell until I freaked out and buried them deeper into the ground. And then I thought and dug it out. I got excited. Who doesn't happen to anyone, yes? When I dug it up, I made a kind of thrower out of the web, into which you can load 5 shuriken at once. Then he applied runes to the shurikens, and etched them into the metal with his blood and a very small amount of magic. And these stars turned into decent bombs that, when they exploded, scattered into fragments in all directions. I did the same with the kunai, but I applied the runes of the lightning network on them. You'll scatter these across the battlefield. And then a bunch of enemies come in there and gasp. So the roast of enemies is ready. Yes. Did I mention I've been irritable lately? No? And what's the damn saddest thing? How do you think? And what I didn't do? When I got there, the robbers were already dead. High quality fried. Electricity. And who do you think did it? No, it was not shinobi who passed by. It was Les who felt my anger towards the robbers and, worried about me, sent 10 chakra wolves there. One of the wolves calmly walked past the posted patrol at night, into the very center of the enemy camp, and then sparkled and called a whole cascade of lightning from the sky. All the robbers sleeping in tents and near fires were instantly killed by millions of volts. And the rest of the wolves finished off the watchman. Even the nuke did not survive. So what should we do? Les doesn't understand that I needed to let off steam and is offended like a child by my irritated hisses at him. And my damn adolescence has begun. I remember the first one, I shudder. And because of the instability of hormonal secretion, rituals are useless here. So I walk around, angry and irritated like a fool. Only raccoons calm down. Well, I can't be angry with these cuties who, with a pitiful look, came up to me with some of the most delicious fruit from the garden and tenderly handed it to me. I always took this fruit from them. These parasites are true experts in choosing yummy food. And these fruits are truly incredibly tasty. To cope with the instability of hormones, I took up physical training. Running, push-ups, squats, lifting weights, and the like. Surprisingly, it helped. It especially helped when I lifted one of the wolves that came to hand on its hump. 100 times like that. But they weigh a lot, however. Centner, no less. If not more. There were no scales to weigh accurately. And because of the fur, it's impossible to estimate by eye. Of course, these were not the largest of their representatives. I won't raise anything big. Only the navel will be untied. Well, maybe in the future, when I get stronger. By the way, I found this very chakra in myself. Not to say a lot, but there was one. Its efficiency sucks, its controls are antediluvian. It's like changing an elven royal horse, mana, to a rural cargo truck, chakra, in my opinion. But in order not to stand out, you need to learn how to use it. Yes, and I'll find somewhere to spend my brave power, otherwise I'll soon start attacking everyone. Brrr. So I took it up. I started everything by trying to feel it. However, there was a big problem. The feeling of mana, which was much greater, interrupted the feeling of chakra. I had to drain mana. Where do you think? That's right, into a tree. I poured mana into it almost to zero, and then sat down to feel the chakra. And so 100 times a day. My core was restoring mana too quickly. When I thought I was going to freak out and throw this damn thing to hell, a wolf came up to me and put his paw on my shoulder. And then I got a serious electric shock. However, on the next attempt, after the impudent wolf was driven into a tree, from where it looked at me offendedly, I finally felt this damn chakra. I then had to go and apologize to the assistant. Well, what can you do if wolves can only use elemental chakra outside the body? After I felt the chakra, I was able to begin to swing it and increase control. These damn leaves will now give me nightmares. At first the leaf didn't react at all. Then I thought of remembering how this procedure even begins and, having hit myself on the forehead with my palm, I began to learn how to generally direct chakra throughout the body. And when it became normal, then I learned to release chakra from Tenketsu. But then came the leaf nightmare. One leaf, which stuck but didn't move. Then a barely crawling leaf. He probably made a record speed a whole centimeter per hour. Do you understand what my level of irritation was? All the living creatures greeted my appearance on another part of the clearing and pretended to be relief objects. Smart, though. After a month of training, I looked like a devil. The leaves were literally everywhere on open areas of the body. And they spun. Some are clockwise, others are counterclockwise. And at the same time they moved around the body along complex trajectories. And I decided that since there was nowhere else to attach the leaves, I could start training walking on trees. The forest did not allow the trees to be damaged, and therefore I learned to walk on granite on the nearest rock. After a week of training, I could stick to it any way I wanted. At least with the tongue. Damn childhood hormones and pranks, eh? And then I decided to learn how to walk on water. I was protected by a giant guardian wolf who came 3 days ago from nowhere. Such a huge carcass, 10 meters at the withers. All white. Just like the rest of the wolves. Are there any regular wolves here? I tried to stand on the water, then dived due to not staying on the surface. The wolf immediately caught me with his paw. Knowing how to do it won't help here. You have to learn everything yourself. Since, firstly, the memory was received from the girl, and secondly, her chakra channels and the hearth itself were clearly much better developed. And I had to match my reflexes and everything else to my chakra channels and hearth, which are much less developed. But after another 6 months, I finally got used to using chakra and found many advantages from it. For example, to strengthen with mana, you need to cast a spell. And when using chakra, direct it to the areas of your body you need and you're done. The difference in use time is simply incredible. And the acceleration of chakra throughout the body helps it develop faster, which with my additional layers of thin aura shells gave a simply mind-blowing effect of strengthening and development. For example, I'm almost 11 now. I stayed in this world for 9.5 months. And now I look about 13 years old, no less. Moreover, the body has developed thoroughly. And not overly visual. I became a handsome and tall guy from my age with broad shoulders and 8-pack abs. And he could calmly do push-ups from the floor, standing on only 2 fingers, upside down 1,500 times. And this is without chakra enhancement. Personally inspires me. I also ideally learned chakra-based techniques, transformation, henge, illusory clones, bunshin, and substitution, kawarini. I also improved my taijutsu a little, although it's not my thing, yes. And so, when I was puzzling over how to recognize my element, something happened that shocked both me and the forest. A wet, wounded and eyeless black-haired guy came out into the clearing. Part 4. Listen, understand and help. Blood of brothers. All 15 small-sized wolves, 3 medium-sized and 1 giant gathered around this guy, and me in addition. I looked at this miracle of nature, and the fact that it is a miracle is clear. Wounded, without eyes, barely standing, and on top of everything else, a guy who looked about 16 years old and soaked to the skin. Everyone was perplexed as to how he got here in such a state, and even more interesting, how did he get here? There were no wounds on him from our fence, and if there had been, he would have been dead long ago, lying under the very bush on which he pricked himself. The guy moved his head around, listening. But apart from the rustling of leaves and the smell of flowers, I saw and heard nothing. Who is here? He finally said, sitting down on the ground. If you are Danzo's messengers, then here I am. Finish off. I raised my eyebrows in surprise at this, and the wolves, wrinkling their noses, silently stepped aside. Even the giant left. I asked Les in images what to do. Les gave me something akin to a shrug. He didn't know what to do either. I asked him why, and he replied that he didn't feel anything negative or bad from this blind man. Well, except for the smell of cat on the element of fire. It was because of this smell that Les did not want to help him. Well, he doesn't like fire, what can you do? I sighed loudly. What are you waiting for? Is it not enough for you that I can barely stand, wounded? Finish it off already, I'm tired. The guy hung his head. And why do you strive for the gray reaches? I asked him. Really, I'm interested. What should I do here? After all, soon my whole family and the whole clan will be there. Since you ask, then you are not and be you not. Who are you? And he is smart. Although such a decision does not require much intelligence. I am a resident in this place. Something like the son of Les. Well, does Les care and babysit? So let him be a dad. And he himself doesn't mind. I asked before I blurted out that. Spirit of the forest? Heh. Boy, that's impossible. This forest was created by the first Hokage of Konoha, Hashirama Senju. This forest cannot have its own spirit. Well, you are proud, shinobi. Ha! Who will ask the newly born forest if it has a soul? This forest also grew, and it doesn't matter how, from a seed or from chakra. This is all nonsense. But answer me in more detail, why are you rushing to Shinigami with words, but with body and soul in the Valley of Life? Which is essentially the opposite of the gray limits. What brought you here? Ha! Boy, you're crazy. I just came. He crawled out of the water and walked until he heard all the sounds of the forest suddenly fall silent. And then you were standing next to each other. Don't lie to me, shinobi. It is impossible to reach this place either by land, water, or air. Neither the sighted nor the blind. Death awaits those who find this place. I tell him with a frown. Although, to be honest, I just didn't know what to do with it. But it is. Why should I lie? If you don't help me, I'll die soon anyway. And soon all representatives of my clan will die. By the end of the dialogue, he completely dropped to a whisper. It's clear. So you came here for someone to save your clan? I asked directly. No one will undertake to save the damned clan. Moreover, if this clan itself drowned in its pride, lust for power and self-interest, they are no longer able to live without it. Even children? It came out of my mouth. Yes, he lowered his head. My best friend and I tried to dissuade the elders from uprising, but they don't want to hear anything. And Danzo's supporters join hands, inciting a stronger conflict both outside the clan and within it. Even if you save someone, it will not break the chains of hatred. And the survivors will take revenge on the killers, and then vice versa, and everything will go in a circle. It's an endless cycle. Yes, it was hard for you. That's all I said. These hidden villages are still a cesspool. BRR, my friend will carry out the sentence of his own clan. But he is unlikely to be able to kill his younger brother. And then the younger brother will eventually kill the older one. And then he will go crazy and rivers of blood will flow again. This cycle is endless and sad. But what can be done to break this cycle? I said thoughtfully. There is one chance. We need to find a place where no one can find our clan. No one at all. And on the night of the massacre, save as many of the youngest Uchiha as possible. They are still so young that they will not remember their parents and their former life. They will also suffer, but only from loneliness, and not from an all-consuming feeling of hatred and thirst for revenge. Sad over lost positions in some village there. Is this the only chance? He spoke, going through his phrases and extracting the main thing, and not all sorts of nonsense. Yes. But there is no place where they won't find us. And there is no salvation for our clan. My brother and I went through everything. And they didn't find any other way out. You are sure? I walked up to him and put a hand glowing with blue light on his head. Les told me some interesting information. And I'm checking it now. And strange and terrible as it may seem, Les's suspicions were confirmed. The guy was mentally coded for a certain sequence of thoughts. He was categorically disgusted by the idea of confronting Konoha in terms of force. And as I understand it, the clan was also skillfully manipulated. As well as popular opinion. Danzo means, I will remember his image from your head well. I'll also get some knowledge and skills. It will come in handy. What are you doing? The guy suddenly asked. I will give you freedom. I answered, and carefully bypassing the protective mechanisms of mental bookmarks, I destroy them, and on the way back I destroy the rest of the unnecessary things. Who puts mental bookmarks so clumsily? Yes, both protection and insurance from the inside are completely defenseless. A moment and everything unnecessary in his head was removed, giving the guy freedom of will and thoughts. And I see the guy smiling happily and widely. Thank you? And the guy fell unconscious. My pleasure, I answered, taking from the mouth of the approaching wolf the eyes of a recently killed robber and a nut from the tree. Carefully inserting the right side of the eyes into the sockets, he placed the nut kernel under his tongue and covered his mouth. A light green light broke through from under the guy's closed eyelids. All the wounds on him quickly closed and disappeared without a trace. But the guy will sleep for at least another day. Tested on wounded large animals. I pointed out the guy to the large wolf, and he nodded his head, picked him up with his paw and carried him to a larger layer of grass in the shade of a tree. There will be a massacre this night. I pulled this out of his head. And all this is because of the eyes of the Scarlet Sharingan and its capabilities. How disgusting. All this politics. All these great villages. All their hypocrisy. The pursuit of power that no one needs. Power for power, power for power. A vicious circle. I read the guy's memory about this clan. I know who the conspirators are. I know who is against the conspiracy. I know the performer. I know the customer. I know about the cover-up. Looking at the peacefully sleeping guy with a smile, he turned to the tree and said out loud, Prepare another clearing separate from this one. And I will take the wolves. Les just sighed sadly, feeling my determination. Make a clearing of normal size to accommodate 200 people. I know that there won't be that many of them, but do it with a reserve for the future. And I went to collect uniforms and prepare weaving. Today will be another night. Why do I need this? Probably because I can. Because I want to do this. Since these rulers are so stupid as to build the loyalty of people and their power on bookmarks, then they are pathetic fools and fools. Destroying a strong clan just because someone needs the eyes of this clan is wrong. And it's doubly wrong to do this to a loyal clan. After all, the Uchihos were not going to rebel earlier, before the damn Danzo started this multi-step intrigue. And the rest are no better either if they don't see what it will lead to. And this will lead to the death of even more people and the fall of Konoha. Of course Danzo wants to take advantage of poor Uzumaki. But what can even the strongest of the Biju do against the whole world? Nothing. Just like Danzo with his ambitions and total stupidity. How did he even break through to power? With such and such brains, having collected all the necessary things, I got dressed, checked how everything fit and went to the exit from the clearing. Today I will save innocent children. They are not guilty of anything in front of the old goats. And then I'll blow up the Uchiha quarter of such and such a mother so that not a single eye goes to the old farts. And why would I do this? Yes, because I want it that way. Having walked and sat down by a tree, I began to weave and insert weaving blanks into the aura. Today I'll need a lot of powerful attacks and stealth. 2 hours later, when it began to get dark, I left the clearing, putting on my face the wolf mask that the tree had grown for me. I was accompanied by faithful wolves, and we moved in silent determination towards Konohagakure no Sato. The old farts will remember this night for the rest of their lives. 15 minutes later, the wolves and I left the forest path and found ourselves right under the wall of Konoha. In the place where Northeast ANBU members enter the village. Approaching the desired section of the wall, I pressed on several stones in the masonry, and the ground near the wall subsided, opening a passage inside. 2 wolves instantly dived there, popped out back a few seconds later, and I entered the passage. I walked only a dozen meters and found myself near the stairs to the top. The wolf next to me was covered with discharges of electricity, and I calmly climbed the stairs, and then entered the premises of some private house. The Northeast ANBU representative, seeing the door open, jumped out of his chair, and immediately slid back in an unconscious state. And I leaned over him, and in a moment all the bookmarks from the guy disappeared. And I knew that this guy had just replaced the previous watchman, and would be here until the morning. So it's a good place to hide for a while. There were 2 hours left until time X. Within an hour, the wolves thoroughly explored the necessary paths, and we moved towards Uchiha Ikizoku. Approaching the block itself, the wolves began to eliminate the rootworms standing on guard. 10 minutes and you're done. And a couple of minutes later we were already entering the clan's territory through a secret passage. The wolves dispersed around me and the whole crowd used the ghost technique, which allowed us to remain invisible. After all, the Sharingan has the ability to notice us. But we don't need this. POV Uchiha Itachi. I walked forward with difficulty. The order was still ringing in my ears. Eliminate the Uchiha clan. Fully. My friend Shursui and I knew that this would happen. My friend, no, more like a brother, gave me his other eye, and then committed suicide by jumping off a cliff into the river. From such a height and into such a stormy river. It is impossible to survive there. And now I had to carry out the order. Kill them all. Father, mother, younger brother. All relatives. For such is the will of Danzo and the Hokage, no, such is the will of Konoha. Villages. And I walked, unable to walk. And I had to do something I didn't want to do. Upon entering the clan territory, I was surprised to see that there was no guard on duty at the entrance. Something happened? It doesn't matter. Taking out his katana from its sheath, he went to the nearest house. But I didn't find anyone there. And in the next one. And in the next one. Misunderstanding and suspicion filled my chest. Crossing from one side of the street to the other, I did not find anyone. In every house everything was in its place. Even a hot dinner for the late husband stood on the table, emitting warm smoke and aroma. But there was no wife, no husband, no children in the house. And so house after house. And so it goes, room by room. I began to feel panic, fear, madness. What's happening? Kai! I tried to dispel the genjutsu, but nothing changed. And then from the direction of my house I heard something that made my hair stand on end. Itachi! Brother! No! It was my brother's cry. But how? Why? I'm here! Instantly breaking into a run, he ran out to his house and saw. There were corpses around. Many corpses of my clanmates and me. This other me held Sasuke by the throat in front of me and spoke. And next to him lay the bodies of his father and mother. Hate. Hate me as much as you can, my stupid little brother. And when the time comes, come and kill me. Tsukiyomi. Hearing the words made my heart skip a beat. How? What's happening? Who are you? I yelled at myself. Everything was boiling and aching inside. Everyone is dead. Everyone except my little brother. I am you. Weakling, I answered with a straight face. And this I behaved absolutely the same as me. He said the same thing as me? The facial expression was the same as mine. Unable to bear this sight of blood, lying without signs of life, Sasuke, with a cry, rushed towards the second me and tried to strike with his sword. But I saw only a wry smile and the second me scattered into crows. My replacement. And then darkness came. NPOV Uchiha Itachi. I walked back along the forest path. And the cat scratched at my soul, but I knew it was necessary. Without this it was impossible. Forgive me, Itachi. And behind my back, above the village hidden in the foliage, a cloud of black smoke rose. The entire Uchiha quarter was burning. And this fire cannot be put out just like that. It will burn until it burns out, everything it should. Sadness echoed in my chest with the coldness of a devastated magical core. Tomorrow will be very bad. But that's good. Part 5. Forest Spirit? Uchiha patron? Or be responsible for your actions? I stood on a tree branch and with a twitching I looked at what was happening in the new habitat of the Uchiha clan. I transferred the Uchiha clan almost in its entirety to a special place that was created by the power of the forest a month ago. The forest was not happy with the new residents, since they were all prone to the elements of fire. But my word that everything would be fine temporarily satisfied him. However, he warned that if these people started throwing fire in the forest, he might get angry. Having left and assured the forest that this would not happen, he transferred Shursui to the clan, along the way pouring into his memory the rules of living in his new place of residence. Let him pass it on to other residents. I also put several images of giant wolves in his head. Just for fun. And he left it right under the nose of one of the adult Uchihas, who, seeing how their clanmate fell out of thin air, bulged his eyes so much that I was afraid that they would fall out of him. Back then I didn't know what my prank with Shursui's memory would result in. And his appearance in front of his clanmates from the void also did me a disservice. In short, when Shursui woke up, he was quite shocked that he could see again. But he was even more amazed by the decent-sized clearing in which the houses were grown. He himself stood under the crown of a giant tree, and before that he was lying on the grass between its roots. And also between the houses and in them, Shursui, amazed to the core, saw clan members busy with various things. Women washed things, looked after children, prepared food from vegetables and fruits that grew in great abundance on trees and bushes. The children, whom Shursui recognized, were happily running and playing, some splashing in a small lake, under the displeased gaze of older Uchihas who were trying to catch fish flashing in the clear waters with homemade fishing rods. "What's happening?" That's all Shursui could say, raising his head to the blue sky visible between the giant trees. "Is this the pure world? I died and see before me my clanmates who died at the hands of my best friend? But I imagined this world to be completely different." Then a hand fell on Shursui's shoulder. "Hey Shursui, are you awake?" The familiar voice of Uchiha Moro spoke behind him. Shaking his head in disbelief, the guy turned around and, standing in front of him, was his uncle, smiling and wiping his soil-stained hands on some rag. "Uncle Moro?" That was all he could squeeze out. "Of course it's me, Shursui. Who did you think you would see in front of you?" Uncle grinned. "I don't understand anything." The former blind man just shook his head. "Well, no wonder. You showed up in the village just this morning. I was on patrol then. Although I can't understand why this is necessary. So I'm standing there, looking at the clouds in the sky and the leaves of the trees dancing in the wind, when you fall out of the void in front of me. I was so surprised and shocked by the way you appeared that I almost dropped my eyes." "Ha!" Uncle scratched his head. "Well, then I took you to the village itself and laid you for a while between the roots of this big guy." And he patted the root of the tree with his palm. "We had to make the bed." He pointed to the nearest grown house. "And when I prepared everything and went out to pick you up, you were already standing with a shocked face and looking around. By the way, how did you appear here?" "I don't know." The guy shook his head. "He probably died." "What?" Uncle rolled his eyes. "What are you talking about?" "But this is the pure world, right?" Shursui answered confidently. No." Shursui was amazed at this answer. "Where are we then?" That's all he could squeeze out of himself. "But no one knows." Uncle shrugged. "We were getting ready to go to bed when I saw something strange. My wife set the table and suddenly froze and turned to the door and went outside. I was surprised by her reaction, and the children came down and walked next to her. I tried to ask her where we were going, but she didn't answer me. I became worried and wanted to stop her, but to my horror, only then did I realize that my body was moving on its own. I was just an observer. I could talk, but I couldn't scream. And I saw more and more clan members coming out of their houses. And they all walked to the head's house. That's how we came to him. The whole clan. From small to large. Helping the elderly and carrying very young children in his arms. But we did it like puppets. Without your own will. Fugaku-sama and his wife and son stood on the threshold of the house. It was clear from their eyes that they also did not control themselves. We had no idea what was going on. But everything changed when a white wolf emerged from the void. A real giant. The size of a bull. On his back sat a red-haired boy who looked to be about 13 years old, wearing a strange mask with a picture of a wolf. And no less strange clothes. I've never seen one like this before. So, he explained to us what was happening and that he wanted to save us. But there was little time left, and he couldn't explain it properly, so he had to use this technique. But he also said that he would not save everyone. He does not need power-hungry fools and completely ossified senile people who are proud of what was, but do not think about what can be achieved. To be honest, I still can't believe that that guy is only 13 years old. He thought and spoke in a way that no one speaks or thinks. He spoke, and we were impressed. We asked questions in our heads, and he immediately explained them to us clearly. And this is without even hearing these very questions. But the most amazing thing began afterwards. White wolves began to appear throughout the area. 9 of them were the same as the one the guy was sitting on. But 3 were larger, at least 5 or 6 meters at the withers. And one is absolutely gigantic. It towered over the houses. It was clearly a call, but never in my life have I seen someone who could summon so many calls at once. The guy looked at us, and it seemed like he was looking into everyone's soul. It was scary. And then, the giant wolf howled, and trees began to grow right in the chapter's garden. Very strange trees. Their bark glowed blue, and between them shone a passage to a completely different place. This is where we are now. Many of us also, without controlling our bodies, began to enter this strange passage. But some stood still. And everyone saw anger and even rage in their eyes. We ourselves thought it was bad, because we were leaving our home, our homeland. However, the guy's words about the fact that our clan would be destroyed gave rise to doubts. When the chosen people crossed here, the passage did not close, and we saw what began to happen later. The guy and the wolves disappeared. We all, both on the other side of the aisle and on this side, suddenly realized that we could move. However, the passage no longer allowed. And then, Itachi came out into the visible area with the others. Son of the head. He was clearly not himself, he was shaking, he had a naked katana in his hand, and he, not listening to the questions of the others, rushed to kill everyone. So we saw what the guy warned about our death. But those who stood on this side of the aisle also realized that the guy really saved us. Some said that perhaps Itachi was controlled by that same guy, just like us. But Itachi's Mangekyo Sharingan shone in his eyes, and it cannot be activated without a voluntary desire. So the doubters had to shut up. When Itachi killed his parents, the passage suddenly closed. And the trees that created it stopped glowing, becoming the most ordinary trees. We've been living here for 2 days now, and as you can see, we're settling in. The place turned out to be very good. There is a lake, houses, all household utensils. And the weather is always warm and comfortable. A lot of fruits and berries grow on trees and bushes. And in the clearings behind the houses there are a lot of vegetables and herbs. When we examined it all a day later, we admitted that the place was ideal for living. But there is one thing. Why did this guy need to save us? What does he need from us? And Shursui stood and remembered the young voice. What are you doing? Shursui asked the voice. I will give you freedom. And the darkness. And now the guy's mind was clear and the bell rang. Thoughts calmly circled in my head. Never before had the guy felt so free. After all, there was always something in my head that got in the way at times. Not allowing, what? I do not remember. It seems that it was not the delirium of an inflamed brain, Shursui muttered. What? Do you know who it was? Yes. I know. Shursui answered firmly, seeing giant wolves in his memory and hearing a young voice. It was the spirit of the forest. He answered my wish and helped. I don't know why or why. But who are we to understand the thoughts of such inhuman creatures? But he looked like a simple boy. Uchiha Moro said doubtfully. What kind of forest spirit is he? Have you seen many boys who are capable of controlling our entire clan and summoning so many summoned animals? I asked Uncle Shursui. And Moro suddenly understood. Indeed, who besides such a spirit is capable of this? Since then this madness began in the Uchiha clan. Which one, you ask? Oh, damn it! They built an altar from stones and several transplanted trees, and now they worship not the will of fire, but the spirit of the forest, which kind of allowed their clan to survive and gave them a wonderful place to live. Shursui, with the help of the entire clan, became like my priest. And now, if the clan trains fire, it is only as a last resort, and in places where nothing can be set on fire, that is, near a lake, or where there are rocks. The forest reacted favorably to this, such a bastard, and showed a small miracle at the altar, turning one of the transplanted trees into the same luminous tree that opened the way for the clan to this place. And now, in an inexplicable way and with a strange logic, I became their savior in spirit, but out of spiritual kindness I shifted this responsibility onto the forest. He sarcastically remarked that there was no point in showing the Uchihas your miracle. I didn't show mine. Heh. And the forest's reasonable remark that it was I who saved them all, I countered with the fact that yes, I saved them. But he didn't show a miracle at the altar? So now Les understood what responsibility for an entire clan was. Hee. And yes, the moment when Itachi noticed my high-quality illusion was well thought out and staged by me. And Itachi's habits, and what he would do or say in such a situation, I got it out of Shursui's head that I had talked about this topic with my friend more than once. After I knocked Itachi out, I temporarily corrected his memory, and now he will believe that he did it all himself. And after a while he will remember something else and begin an investigation. And if you are smart and stubborn enough, you will find your clan. And the clan will find a way out into the outside world. Now stop studying the habits of the wild Uchiha tribe, and it's time to start training. But it is necessary, it is necessary. Chakra turned out to be exactly what the magician really lacks in life strength and speed of the body. What can I make of myself? I'll have to think carefully. Part 6. Meeting. While studying the abilities of chakra, I became more and more depressed. Why? It's simple. I ran into the same problem as in my home world. I don't have enough techniques. Actually, Mitarashi knew a lot of useful things, but not everything. And some of her particularly powerful techniques were based on the elemental element of chakra. But I don't really know my element. This is the rub. And techniques based on the element of water were not given to me at all. I didn't know what I was doing wrong. And from the girl's memory I only extracted the fact that the elements are determined using some piece of paper that is sold in a special equipment store in Konoha. And how do you tell me to get it? Thinking about this topic for a long time gave me a headache, since it is unlikely that they will easily sell me something in a special store. It's not for nothing that they call it that. And even these strange Uchihas. I don't understand them at all. For 6 months now they have been living in their forest valley in the most remote corner. The forest placed them there because of their dislike for the element of fire. And everything is not right for them, and everything is not enough for them, damn it. It got to such a point that I freaked out and opened an exit for them to the public world, turning the altar into a portal with the help of the forest. But the portal will be maintained by the Uchihas themselves, with the help of draining their chakra. And what? No need to spoil them. Otherwise they will sit on your neck and let your legs hang down. But I also have to give them credit. Before going out into the world, the reconnaissance group carefully camouflaged themselves, repainted their hair, and applied henge to their eyes, making them completely different from the Uchihas. So a group of 3 people will come out to the people, a girl and 2 guys. The girl was made to have white hair and bright blue eyes. The guys became red-haired and freckled with ordinary brown eyes. Everyone was wearing clothes from the new settlement, unusual, but it would not have been possible to identify any of the Uchihas by it. By the way, the clothes that I created from plants and cobwebs were appreciated by the Uchihas, and now everyone wears them. The Uchiha sign also changed. Why did they do this? How can I know this? Probably something like this: a new life, a new sign, or something like that. But for the real reason, I didn't kick in the teeth. I already said that everyone is Sharingan crazy? In short, their new sign, 2 intertwined crowns of blue trees, between which 3 tomo hung in a green flame. It looks very impressive, in my opinion. Even better than the good old fan. Although there are such changes in the Uchiha clan? From what I know about them, this is nonsense. But the fact remains a fact. Shisui thoroughly went through the brains of all his clanmates, and they changed a lot in themselves and their way of life. The group's goal was to collect information about the position of their new settlement in space, obtain information about changes in Konoha, as well as obtain money and establish trade with some merchants to import shortages of household items. The group left 2 months ago. And what amazed everyone most was that Shisui's Sharingan had awakened. In transplanted eyes? And he was strange because of the influence of the acorn of life. The first difference between the new Sharingan and the old one: there is no oppressive feeling of hatred that accompanies the activation of the standard Uchiha Dojutsu. The second difference is in color. Shisui's Sharingan is all shades of green. That is, the whites of the eyes are light green with a darker green iris and pupil, and dark green tomo. Almost black. And 3 tomo appeared at once, which again surprised everyone. After all, it had never happened before that dojutsu appeared in transplanted eyes. Then everything was again attributed to the forest spirit, and many Uchihas began to come to the altar and pray for a blessing and the gift of the same eyes as their priest. By the way, mostly those clan representatives who came were those who had not yet awakened their dojutsu. And probably 2 or 3 of those who awakened their eyes. The rest were happy with everything. I also forgot to tell you that Shisui's eyes acquired several additional properties. And we lost a few. For example, Shisui was now unable to activate Mangekyo, but was not too upset about this because he was happy that he had his Sharingan again. Therefore, no one knew what happened to the Mangekyo's abilities and whether they had changed. But Shisui was also surprised to realize that he could easily create iron and jutsu techniques, and that he had them at a much higher quality level than those of the Uchiha who were ironing. And the simple application of this energy to the sick relieved pain and healed minor wounds. His illusions became stronger than before. Especially where the forest was thicker and there was an abundance of plants. And it became easier for him to navigate the forest. There he began to feel at home. Another problem showed up during training. He could no longer use fire in his techniques. Not at all. At first this unsettled him and made him nervous. However, when he tried all the known techniques of other elements, he realized with shock that he now had the elements of water and wind, and also had some affinity for earth. It was a good replacement for the lost fire. But there was one thing: Shisui knew a lot of fire techniques, like the members of his clan, but knew very little about the other elements. Except for the lightning that sometimes awakened in the representatives of this clan. And now he collected all the known techniques of new directions from the clan and trained like crazy in them. I even tried to make new ones. But I can't say that it was easy for him. You know, in my free time from my training, I like to follow this clan. What made them especially funny was their veneration of the altar and the spirit of the forest. Now it was impossible to hear from the Uchihas about the will of fire. They began to despise everything connected with it, sadly remembering their efforts to help Konoha and its response to them. The Uchiha also planned to create a new protector and, in general, a shinobi village. But this is still in their planning. Is there nothing else they can do? But the problem with my definition of the chakra element came first for me. I'm curious. And the magician's curiosity the most terrible thing. Take my word for it, as a representative of this class. And so one day, having freaked out, he went to the cache with the things left over from the robbers, changed clothes, collected some money, and went to Konoha. Of course, in order not to be recognized, I changed my appearance according to the Uchiha method. He dyed his hair white using magic and changed his eye color to yellow. And outwardly I already looked about 15 years old, and not my true 10. So it's unlikely that they'll recognize me. Even Mitarashi herself. The forest path quickly moved me closer to Konoha, and I walked a little through the forest towards the road when I heard dull blows on a tree and a boy's voice. I will. The strongest. I will. Hokage. And you all recognize me, Databeo. And the knocks were heard with redoubled force. Having become interested in this, I decided to look at this woodpecker. Walking along the animal path towards the sounds, I came out into a small clearing about 20 meters in diameter. Ancient targets, makivars and pillars were installed in the clearing. And near one of the pillars a boy who looked about 10 years old was training. In an old, worn and patched many times by a crooked master, a bright orange jumpsuit, blue standard shinobi sandals and with glasses on his forehead. He had straw-colored hair standing upright, blue, slightly sad eyes and strange either scars or birthmarks on his cheeks in the form of a mustache. He was now practicing his blows with all his might on the pillar standing nearby. The guy didn't notice me and continued to hit the post incorrectly, and somehow crookedly. In these broken and incorrectly placed blows, the standard fighting style of Konoha was difficult to read. The sheet style is called. To be honest, from Mitarashi's memory I know for sure that this style is very SOSO, and if it is also staged incorrectly it's generally a guard, it's better not to use it. Having looked at this action, I was about to leave when I heard a slightly angry exclamation. I will surpass you, Sasuke. You'll see, Databeo. And then a strange energy flared from the boy, in which I discerned with horror and shock the will of creation. And this means, well, it can't be that the village's weapons are being trained outside its borders, right? Well, aren't those who follow him the same idiots? Speaking of surveillance. Having launched the will of the forest, I scanned the area and realized with shock that no one was watching the boy. How is that? What kind of idiocy? Where are the ANBU who are supposed to be by his side? But the will did not show anyone, and hide from it in a place where the forest grows unreal. Shaking my head, I sat down under the nearest tree and began to study the guy's energy. And when I saw the seal on his stomach, I wanted to bang my head against the wall. Well, what idiot came up with the idea of sealing one of the Creator's powers with the help of the power of the god of death? This is complete idiocy. Since creation is opposite to the forces of death, they have the strongest opposition to each other. This means that the print is unstable. Rams. Besides the unstable sealing seal, I saw something else in the guy. And it was very interesting, since the boy developed the germ of a divine skill. Surprising but true. The guy radiated the charisma of a god with his aura. This means he could mentally and spiritually change the people around him. True, as I see, he is not even aware of his strength. And who will teach him, if everything here is tied to chakra and bodily training, and not to the development of subtle shells? This little guy has a core. Something I have never seen in any person here. And also a pretty strong core. With it, he can use spells up to the 6th circle inclusive. And this is without training. Amazing. However, the undeveloped thin shells of the aura and the guy's obvious reluctance to develop mentally will greatly complicate his chance of feeling magic, and not chakra, at least once. You're hitting it wrong, I suddenly said. Loneliness seems to have finished me off. I want to communicate. The boy, hearing my voice, jumped up on the spot with a scream, and then, turning to face me, pointed his finger at me with a twitching eye. Why are you so scared, Databeo? And you call yourself a shinobi? Couldn't you notice the simple civilian who came from the forest to your clearing? I raised my eyebrows skeptically. And he suddenly blushed and began to scratch the back of his head furiously. Damn, Databeo. How embarrassing, come on, guy. You are still young, forgivable for you. But look, when you graduate from the academy and become a genin, such carelessness can be fatal for you and your team. So learn to monitor your surroundings. Thank you, Databeo, the guy answered, puzzled. What are you doing here? Yes, I passed by, towards the road and the gate to your village. For some business here. Clear. Are you a shinobi? Suddenly the blonde asked, and I almost hit myself with a palm on my forehead. Well, why did he listen? No, I'm a civilian. But I know a little about shinobi affairs, since I have a shinobi friend. He taught me some tricks that don't require chakra. Still, I answered him with a prepared legend. Well, I'm good. And I feel sorry for him. This guy has amazing potential and they treat him like trash. Eh? What kind of morons are running this village? Even Kage Cloud is not such an idiot, although many people think the opposite. And what did they do to the guy that he is so sociable with the first person he meets? He didn't suspect anything strange about me. Yes, and he speaks with pleasure. And he listens. Assholes, about. It's clear. The guy nodded to himself. And you, suddenly the guy became embarrassed. Can you tell me what I'm doing wrong? Holy saints. Is he asking a civilian for advice? This world has gone completely crazy. But I can't pass by. Of course, I still have a conscience, but I have it, and it won't let me sleep peacefully if I don't do at least something for him. Fine, I sighed and got up from the grass where I was sitting. I'll give you a hint, but don't expect much. I'm not a shinobi, and therefore I won't be able to help much with chakra, but I can help improve my movements and stance. Just like with kunai a little, if necessary. The guy, having heard my answer, began to shine and smiled with all 32 teeth. Hooray! And he jumped on the spot with joy. Oh, holy innocence! Approaching the guy, I asked him to stand next to the mannequin. And when he did what I asked, I corrected the position of his legs and arms, the angle of his elbows and the clenching of his fists. Like this. Remember this position of your arms, legs and body. It is correct, and it will be more convenient for you to subsequently use this particular stance. Understood. The boy nodded seriously, looking around at all the changes and remembering. And who said that he is an idiot and ignoramus? I don't understand, remember? Yes. And the guy repeated the stance quite well. Well done. Now watch how to strike. I stood next to the dummy and performed several power strikes. These hits are used for maximum damage. But they have disadvantages: speed of execution and openness at impact. Will go against slow and clumsy opponents, but not against agile, graceful and fast ones. As you noted, these strikes use your entire body, not just your arms. Do you understand what you did wrong when carrying out your strikes? The guy looked at his beaten, stuffed fists, and then smiled broadly and answered yes. For strong blows, I only used my hands, not my whole body. Right. I smiled back at him. Now throw a few punches like I showed you. Use your whole body. The boy was making progress right before his eyes, which was amazing. After all, Mitarashi's memory literally screamed about his stupidity, playfulness, and the fact that he was a loser. Moronic, however. In reality, I see something completely different. Soon he began to perform power strikes and techniques more or less correctly, and I moved on to teaching him fast and precise strikes. Fortunately, although my body was not taught to use all this correctly, I have the memory of a kunoichi. Therefore, I can teach the boy a lot. We practiced like this for 3 or 4 hours. I got carried away and didn't pay attention to the time. When the guy started getting punches and techniques, I decided to move on. I told him that I had to go. This upset him greatly, so I promised to teach him something else tomorrow morning, if he was free, of course. The guy enthusiastically agreed to come. That's how I met an amazing and kind Borutouzumaki Naruto.